Welcome to Lady Mythos. Tonight, the wind is moving low across an Irish field. It isn't violent. It isn't gentle either. It presses the grass flat and lets it rise again, as if testing how much it can bend without breaking. The sky is the colour of cold iron. No sun, no stars yet. Just a wide stretch of grey that makes the land feel older than it should. At the edge of the field, there is a shallow river crossing. Stones just beneath the surface, water sliding around them with that steady, patient sound that rivers make when they have somewhere to be. And there is someone standing in the water. She is not dressed like a queen. No crown, no jewels. Her dark hair hangs loose, heavy with damp. The hem of her dress drifts around her legs as the current moves past. In her hands, she holds a piece of armour. It is dented, scratched, dark along the edges. She dips it into the water and begins to wash it. Not carefully, not kindly, just steadily. The metal scrapes against stone. The river carries thin threads of red downstream. She does not look up at first, but then she does. And when she lifts her head, it is clear she is not surprised. She knew someone was watching. The armour she is washing does not belong to her. It belongs to the man who is standing on the riverbank. He hasn't fought yet. He hasn't bled. He is still alive. And yet she washes his armour as if the battle has already happened, as if the ending is not in question. This is how many first met her. Not as a goddess seated on a throne, not as a warrior charging into battle, but as a woman in a river, preparing for a death that has not yet arrived. This is the Morrigan. In the oldest Irish stories, she is not easy to name. Some called her the Great Queen. Others called her the Phantom Queen. Some said she was one woman. Others insisted she was three. A crow on a battlefield, a young woman offering love, an old crone at the edge of a road, a voice in the dark before a spear is thrown. She does not rule in the way kings rule. She does not protect in the way mothers protect. She does not comfort. She watches. She chooses. And sometimes she tests. If you walk through early Irish myth, you will find her standing just to the side of the main story. Not in the centre, not in the background either. Close enough to touch, far enough to remain uncertain. She stands beside rivers, on hills before battles, in the minds of men who think they are untouchable. And the strange thing is this: she is not always against them, but she is never entirely for them either. Tonight, we're not telling the story of a warm hearth. We're not sitting beside a friendly fire. Tonight, we are stepping into mist and open ground, into a world where land itself has a voice. And sometimes that voice takes the shape of a woman. So settle in. Let your breathing slow. Let the field rise around you. The river is still moving, and she is still standing in it. Chapter 1. The Morrigan, Celtic war goddess. The riverbank is empty now. The man who watched her has stepped back into the field. The water keeps moving. The woman in the shallows sets the armor aside and walks out of the current without hurry. She does not look back. From a distance, she could be mistaken for anyone. A traveller, a widow, a farmer's daughter crossing wet ground. But there is something deliberate in the way she moves. Not cautious, not nervous, certain. By the time she reaches the slope above the ford, a crow has landed on a standing stone nearby. It watches her. She does not acknowledge it, but the bird does not leave. In the earliest Irish texts, her name appears in different forms. Morrigan, Morrigan, sometimes simply the Morrigan, as though she is not one among many, but something singular. The name is often translated as Great Queen. Not queen in the sense of a throne and court, not queen in silk or gold. Great in the older sense. Vast, overarching, inevitable. And queen in the sense of authority over outcome. She does not command armies in formation. She presides over what happens to them. When medieval scribes wrote down the stories of the Tuatha Dé Danann, they did not describe her as gentle. They did not describe her as nurturing. They did not describe her as beautiful in the decorative way later legends prefer. They described her as present before battle, as a voice heard at night, as a crow on the shoulder of the slain. Sometimes she appears walking across a plain before armies arrive. Not fighting, not warning, simply moving through tall grass as if measuring it. Sometimes she is heard before she is seen. A cry overhead, the sound of wings cutting air. And sometimes she stands close enough to speak. There is a tendency in modern retellings to flatten her into a war goddess. It's easy shorthand. It fits neatly into categories people recognize. But the early stories suggest something more precise. She is not war itself. She is the tension before it. The shift in air when men realize they may not return home. The quiet certainty that some names will be remembered and others will disappear. If a spear is thrown, she is there. If a king rises, she is there. If a hero boasts, she is there too, watching. She does not rush to interfere. She waits. In the Book of Invasions, and later in Cah Macha Tuired, she moves among the Tuatha Dé Danann not as a servant, not as decoration, but as a force that must be consulted. Even the Dagda, powerful, broad, difficult to intimidate, meets her at Samhain not as an equal in warmth, but as someone stepping into uncertain ground. That alone tells us something. A god of abundance approaches her carefully. A god of strength does not dismiss her. Because she does not respond to strength the way enemies do. She responds to imbalance. There are moments in the texts where she speaks prophecy. Not vague riddles, clear outcomes. Blood will fall. Kings will die. Victory will come, but not without cost. She never promises safety. she promises truth. The crow on the standing stone shifts its weight. Its feathers catch the dull light of the sky. The woman who left the river pauses near the crest of the hill and looks out across the land. No armies yet. No banners. Just fields and distant tree lines. But she looks as though she can already see what will happen there. In some accounts, when warriors prepared for battle, they believed the appearance of a crow overhead was not random. It meant she had taken interest. Not approval. Interest. To be noticed by her was not necessarily a blessing. It meant you would matter in what was coming. And mattering, in her world, often came at a cost. She does not inspire loyalty through kindness. She inspires attention through inevitability. If she stands near you, something is about to shift. She does not comfort the dying. She marks them. She does not lead charges. She observes who holds their ground. In later folklore, people would soften her edges, turn her into something easier to digest. A ghostly figure, a banshee-like wailer. But in the earliest layers of myth, she is solid, physical, walking riverbanks, standing in fields, speaking plainly, and always tied to the land itself. Not the heavens, not distant realms. The ground. The soil that drinks blood and grows grass again without apology. The woman on the hill lifts her face toward the wind. For a moment, she and the crow are aligned. Same stillness, same awareness. Then the bird takes off, cutting across the sky in a straight line toward the horizon. She does not follow it. She turns instead toward the darker edge of the field, where forest begins. Because before there were battles to oversee, before there were heroes to test, there were other forms, other names, other shadows that moved beside her. And to understand her fully, we have to step into that older shape. The shape that was never just one. Chapter 2. The Triple Morrigan. Badb, Macha, and Nemain. Morning breaks over open land. Not a battlefield. Not yet. Just a wide stretch of grass with low mist moving in strips across the ground. The kind of mist that doesn't fully hide anything, but makes every shape uncertain. 3 women walk through it. They are not holding hands. They are not speaking. But they move in quiet alignment, spaced apart just enough that you could mistake them for strangers, until you notice their faces. The same eyes, the same sharp line of jaw, the same stillness. In early Irish sources, the Morrigan does not always stand alone. Sometimes she appears beside other figures, Badb, Macha, and in some accounts, Nemain. The grouping shifts depending on the manuscript. Sometimes the Morrigan is one of 3 sisters. Sometimes she is the name that gathers them all. The texts do not settle it neatly. And perhaps they were never meant to. In Mag Tuired, Badb is named directly in connection with battle frenzy. She appears over combat as a crow, shrieking, inciting chaos among enemies. Warriors hear her cry and feel it in their bones. Some say it drives men to panic. Others say it drives them to fight harder. Bow is noise. Bow is confusion. Bow is the sudden spike of fear when formation breaks. Macha, on the other hand, is tied less to frenzy and more to consequence. She is linked to kingship, to land, and to the well-being of Ulster itself. In one story, she forces the men of Ulster to experience the pain of childbirth because of a broken oath. Her power is not in panic, it is in accountability. Macha is law. Macha is humiliation turned into lesson. Macha is sovereignty denied and reclaimed. And then there is Nemain. Nemain is rarely calm. She is the surge of terror that moves through an army without warning. The shaking hands before a sword is lifted. The sudden collapse of courage when lines begin to falter. In some accounts, she does not need to strike. She only needs to be felt. Nemain is frenzy. Nemain is psychological fracture. Nemain is the moment discipline breaks. And then there is the Morrigan herself. Sometimes she stands apart from them. Sometimes she is listed among them. Sometimes the text refers to the Morrigan, plural. It is not confusion. It is layering. Imagine one force that can approach you in several ways. As warning, as judgment, as panic, as outcome. The three women in the field stop walking. One turns her head sharply. This is Badb, hair loose, eyes alert, posture restless. She scans the horizon as though she already hears distant movement. The second stands straighter. Macha, controlled, measured, her expression unreadable. The third seems almost to shimmer at the edge of sight. Nemain, less still, less anchored. The air around her feels unsettled. And the last remains calmest of all, the Morrigan, watching. They do not argue. They do not merge. But the space between them feels thin, as though if you blinked, they might shift places without effort. In Irish myth, identity is not rigid. A god or goddess can shift roles depending on the moment. What matters is function. Bow unsettles. Macha enforces. Nemain unravels. The Morrigan binds the outcome together. And when battle approaches, all aspects may be felt at once. There are passages describing a crow flying above the field, landing on a man's shoulder, and then transforming into a woman who speaks clearly and directly. That is not chaos. That is precision. The crow is not random death. It is chosen death. In some traditions, warriors would listen for the cry of a crow before combat. If they heard it circling overhead, they believed fate had already taken notice. And fate, in these stories, is not abstract. It has a face. It can stand in front of you. It can speak your name. The four figures begin walking again, but now their paths diverge slightly. Baya veers toward a rocky ridge. Macha walks toward distant farmland. Nemain moves toward open ground where wind cuts hardest. And the Morrigan turns toward a narrow trail leading downhill. For the people who told these stories, land was not separate from divinity. Hills had memory, rivers had intention, fields carried consequence. A sovereignty goddess did not live in the clouds, She embodied the territory itself. To accept her was to accept responsibility. To reject her was to invite fracture. And this is important, because later, when she approaches a hero and offers him something that sounds like desire, it is not seduction. It is alignment being tested. But we are not there yet. For now, the mist thins. The field becomes clearer. The figures grow harder to distinguish from ordinary travellers. A farmer in the distance might see only silhouettes and think nothing of it. That is how she moves through the earliest myths. Visible, but not announced. Many names, one presence. And always just ahead of the turning point. Next, we return to the river, but not to the man who watched her. This time, the armor in the water belongs to someone who does not yet know he is being measured. Chapter 3. The Washer at the Ford. Death Omen. The river here is narrower than before. It cuts between two low banks lined with thorn bushes and exposed roots. The water is shallow enough to cross on foot, but only if you know where the stones sit beneath the surface. This is a ford, a crossing place. And crossing places, in Irish myth, are never neutral. Late afternoon light rests low across the water. The sky is pale, almost white. No wind now, just the steady movement of the current slipping around rocks polished by years of passage. A young warrior approaches from the east. He is not famous yet. His shield is still new. His spear balanced carefully. He walks with the controlled energy of someone who believes skill will carry him through anything. He is on his way to join others. There has been talk of tension between territories. Cattle taken. Insults traded. Nothing large yet, but enough to stir men into movement. As he nears the ford, he slows. Someone is already there. A woman kneels in the water. Her sleeves are rolled back. Her long dark hair hangs forward over one shoulder. In her hands, she holds a blood-stained tunic. Not torn, not shredded, just stained. She dips it into the river and begins scrubbing. The motion is steady, methodical. No rush. The warrior stands still. The sound of fabric dragged against stone fills the quiet air. He clears his throat. Not loudly, just enough to announce himself. She does not startle. She does not turn immediately either. After a moment, she lifts the tunic from the water and wrings it out slowly. Dark water runs from the cloth, trailing downstream. Only then does she look up. Her expression is not threatening. It is not warm either. It is assessing. The warrior shifts his weight. "Who does that belong to?" he asks, nodding toward the tunic. She glances down at it as though considering. "It belongs to you," she says. The answer lands without drama. He laughs, a short, dismissive sound. "You must be mistaken." She studies him, his posture, his grip on the spear, the way his jaw tightens when he smiles. "No," she says calmly. "I am not." He steps closer to the bank. That tunic isn't mine. I haven't fought yet. She lifts the fabric again and dips it back into the water. That is true, she says. He feels something tighten under his ribs. What are you saying? She does not answer directly. Instead, she finishes washing the cloth and lays it across a flat stone to dry. The red stain remains faintly visible, even after the rinsing. The washer at the ford appears in multiple strands of Irish tradition. In some accounts, she is named directly as the Morrigan. In others, she is left unnamed, but always connected to the same force. She washes the clothes of those who are about to die. Not to prevent it, not to cause it, but to acknowledge that it is already written. The warrior's breathing has shifted now, slightly faster. You're trying to frighten me, he says. Her mouth curves, not into a smile, but into something close to patience. If you frighten easily, she replies, that is not my doing. He wants to challenge her, to demand clarity, but something in her stillness keeps him from stepping into the water. Instead, he glances upstream. The path ahead curves into wooded land. That is where he is headed. That is where others are gathering. He looks back at her. Tell me plainly, he says. Will I die? She considers the question. Everyone does, she answers. That's not what I mean. She stands now, water sliding from the hem of her dress. She steps onto the stones without slipping, though they are slick. You will matter, she says. It is not reassurance. It is not comfort. It is weight. The warrior swallows. Is there a way to change it? Her eyes hold his for a moment longer than necessary. Change what? The outcome. She steps past him, walking toward the western bank. You can change how you stand in it, she says. Not whether it comes. Then she keeps walking. He turns to follow her with his eyes, but as she reaches the thorn bushes at the edge of the bank, a crow erupts upward from the brush with a sharp cry. He flinches. By the time he looks back, the woman is gone. Only the river remains, and the faint outline of a tunic drying on stone. In later centuries, this figure would evolve into the Banshee, the woman who wails before death. But in these older stories, she does not wail. She works. She prepares. She names what is already in motion. The warrior stands at the ford for a long time, longer than he intended. Eventually, he crosses. The water is cold around his ankles, the stones unstable. Halfway through, he glances down at his reflection in the current. For just a second, he thinks he sees red along the edge of his collar. He blinks. It's gone. By the time he reaches the opposite bank, the sky has shifted toward evening. He does not know whether to feel warned or marked. And that uncertainty follows him into the trees. Because the Morrigan does not always shout. Sometimes she kneels quietly at the edge of a crossing and waits for you to ask the wrong question. But not every man meets her as a warning. Some meet her face to face and refuse her outright. Chapter 4. the Morrigan, and sacred kingship. The hill is bare at the top, grass worn thin by wind, stones set in a rough circle, old enough that no one remembers who placed them there. From this height, you can see farmland in the distance, low fields divided by hedges, cattle grazing near water. The land looks calm, but calm land can still judge. A man stands inside the stone ring. He is not armored, no spear, no shield. He wears a cloak fastened at the shoulder with a simple brooch. Around him, a few witnesses stand back, silent. They are not here for spectacle. They are here for confirmation. He is about to be named king. In early Irish tradition, kingship was not simply inheritance. It was alignment. The land itself had to accept you. And that acceptance was not symbolic. It was embodied. The Morrigan steps into the circle without announcement. No crow this time, no mist. Just a tall woman walking up the slope, dark hair loose, dress moving in the wind. The witnesses fall silent. Some lower their gaze. The man inside the circle stiffens, but he does not step back. "You would rule this territory," she says, her voice level. "Yes," he answers. "Why?" He hesitates. "Because this is not a formal ceremony. There are no rehearsed responses." "To protect it," he says at last. "To strengthen it. To be remembered." She studies him. "Strength without restraint turns against the soil," she says. "Protection without fairness breeds revolt. And remembrance is not yours to command." The wind shifts. It pulls at his cloak. "You think you are ready," she continues. "But if famine comes, will you feed yourself first? If enemies kneel, will you crush them to prove a point? If the land grows thin under your rule, will you blame the sky?" Her questions are not dramatic. They are precise. The witnesses do not move. This is the test. The Morrigan, in early myth, is deeply tied to sovereignty. She does not crown kings, she measures them. In some stories, she appears as a beautiful woman offering union. In others, as a hag demanding acknowledgement. The form changes, the demand does not. A ruler must align with the land. And she is the land. Not the grass alone, not the rivers alone, but the continuity beneath it. The man in the circle steadies himself. "What do you require?" he asks. "Nothing," she says. "That is the problem." He frowns. "If you must be persuaded to rule well," she continues, "you are already unfit." The wind presses harder against the hilltop. "Stand here," she says. "Not as king, as a man." He lowers his head slightly. She steps closer. There is no theatrical gesture, no ritualized exchange, but the implication is clear. Union with her, whether physical, symbolic, or spoken, is not romance. It is consent. Consent to be accountable to the land. Consent to be judged by outcome, not intention. Some kings in the myths accept her fully. They align. They prosper. Others resist her influence. Their reigns fracture. Crops fail. borders collapse. In one well-known episode, the Dagda himself meets her at Samhain, the turning of the year. Not on a throne, not in court, in a river. She sets the terms. She offers prophecy. He listens. That detail matters. Even gods of strength do not dismiss her. Back on the hill, the man meets her eyes again. "I will rule justly," he says. "That is easy to promise," she replies. "Harder to practice." She reaches out and places her hand briefly against his chest. Not tender, not harsh. Testing. He does not pull away. The witnesses watch for some sign. Lightning, thunder, a shift in air. Nothing dramatic happens. Instead, she steps back. "If you fail," she says quietly, "the land will know. And so will I." Then she turns and walks downhill. The witnesses exhale slowly. The man inside the stone ring remains where he stands, longer than necessary. Because now he understands something. Kingship is not elevation. It is exposure. The Morrigan does not bless. She binds. And if you accept that binding, you may rule. If you reject it, openly or quietly, she will not argue. She will wait. And when the land begins to show cracks, she will be there again. Not as lover, not as judge, as consequence. But not every man accepts her terms. One of them laughs at her. And that laughter echoes farther than he expects. By the time he reaches the opposite bank, the sky has shifted toward evening. He does not know whether to feel warned or marked. And that uncertainty follows him into the trees. Because the Morrigan does not always shout. Sometimes she kneels quietly at the edge of a crossing and waits for you to ask the wrong question. But not every man meets her as a warning. Some meet her face to face and refuse her outright. Chapter 5. The Morrigan and Cú Chulainn. The path is narrow and uneven. It winds between tall slabs of rock that rise like broken walls on either side. Heather grows in patches along the slopes, purple fading into brown under late afternoon light. No farms nearby, no witnesses. Only wind moving steadily through the pass. Cú Chulainn walks alone. He is young, strong, already known for speed and ferocity, though not yet legend. His armor fits close to his body. His spear rests easily in his grip. He moves like someone who expects challenge and welcomes it. He has agreed to defend Ulster almost single-handedly during a cattle raid. The odds do not concern him. If anything, they sharpen him. He rounds a bend in the path and stops. A woman stands ahead of him, not blocking the trail, just present. Her dark hair is loose, her posture relaxed. She looks neither lost nor threatened. "You travel alone," she says. "I do," he replies. Her voice is calm, but direct. "You face many enemies." "I do." "And you think yourself equal to them?" He lifts his chin slightly. "I am." She steps closer, but not close enough to touch. "I can help you," she says. He studies her more carefully now. She is not armed, not visibly. How? He asks. I will strengthen you, she says. I will fight beside you. I will protect your flanks. Your enemies will fall faster. And what do you want in return? Her gaze does not waver. Your acknowledgement. It is not framed as romance. It is not pleading. It is alignment. He lets out a short laugh. I need no protection, he says. And I offer no acknowledgement to women who wander roads, speaking in riddles. The air shifts slightly. Be careful, she says. I am always careful. You are proud, she replies. That is why you are strong. And why you may fall. He tightens his grip on his spear. If you are a goddess, name yourself plainly, he says. If you are a mortal, step aside. She holds his gaze a moment longer. Then she says it. I am the Morrigan. He does not bow. He does not step back. I have no time for games, he answers. I have a battle waiting. And I will not share my victory. That is the mistake. Her expression changes, not to anger, to decision. You will remember this, she says. He shakes his head. No, he replies. I will not. She steps aside. He walks past her without another glance. The pass narrows again. He moves quickly now, eager to reach the field ahead. The first attack comes at the river crossing later that evening. He steps into shallow water, focused on scanning the far bank. Something coils around his ankle. He stumbles forward hard, nearly dropping his spear. An eel twists around his leg, strong and deliberate. Not random. He slashes downward with precision and cuts it free. The creature thrashes once and disappears into the current. He curses under his breath and continues. The second attack comes in open ground. Cattle scatter suddenly from the hillside. A wolf barrels down toward him, snapping at the animals, driving them toward his position. He braces himself and hurls a stone with exact aim. It strikes the wolf's flank. The animal collapses and vanishes into the grass. He frowns. This is no coincidence. The third attack comes at dawn. A red cow charges him directly, head lowered. He pivots and drives his spear into its side. The animal bellows once and falls. Silence follows. He stands, breathing hard, scanning the field. Then he hears it. A familiar voice. You wound easily, she says. He turns. An old woman stands beside the fallen cow, bent, thin, one eye clouded. She holds a small wooden pail and begins milking the dying animal with steady hands. Her fingers tremble slightly. You again, he says sharply. She looks up. Drink, she says, holding out the pail. I will not. You are injured, she replies. He glances down. Only now does he notice shallow cuts along his leg and shoulder. bruises forming. Not deep, but present. He hesitates. The milk smells clean, warm. He drinks. As he lowers the pail, he notices something. The old woman winces slightly. He looks at her hands, bruised. He looks at her leg, a cut matching the one he inflicted on the eel. Understanding settles slowly. You, he says. She straightens slightly. Not fully old anymore. Not fully young either. You refused me, she says. You said you needed no help. I do not, he answers, though less sharply now. You needed awareness, she corrects. You fight well, but you fight alone. He says nothing. She steps back. In battle, she continues, strength is not enough. You must know when fate is watching. And now? He asks. She studies him. Now you have learned that even what you wound may return. Her form shifts subtly. The old woman fades. The tall, dark-haired figure stands in her place once more. You will fight bravely, she says. You will be remembered. But not in the way you imagine. He does not respond. Because something inside him recognizes the weight of that. She turns away from him, walking across the field without hurry. A crow lifts from the grass and circles once overhead before following her. Cú Chulainn remains where he stands. He has not been defeated. He has not bowed. But he has been measured. And somewhere beneath his pride, a thin crack has formed. He does not yet know how important that crack will be. But she does. And she does not forget. Because soon, the land itself will erupt into battle. And she will not approach as offering. She will arrive as certainty. Chapter 6. The Morrigan at Mag Tuired. The plain stretches wide and open. No trees close enough to hide behind. No hills steep enough to provide cover. Just tall grass bending under steady wind and a sky that feels too large for comfort. Mag Tuired. The ground where two forces are about to meet. It is early morning. The light is thin. Mist clings low to the field, flattening sound. No armies yet, no banners. Just the faint imprint of trampled paths where scouts have passed. A single figure walks across the grass. The Morrigan moves without haste, barefoot, the hem of her dark dress brushing the tops of seed heads. She does not look left or right. She does not scan for threat. She already knows what is coming. In the stories of the Second Battle of Mag Tuired, she appears before the clash begins. Not as commander, not as strategist, as witness. She speaks prophecy to the Tuatha Dé Danann, not comfort, not reassurance. She tells them plainly that blood will soak this field, that many will fall, that even victory will not come without cost. The wind shifts and carries the distant sound of preparation. Metal striking metal, voices low but urgent. She stops walking near the center of the plain. For a moment, the field is silent again. Then she speaks, not loudly, but with clarity that seems to travel farther than sound should. "I see the Fomorians gathering," she says. "I see their ships dark against the sea. I see spears lifted like reeds." She turns slightly toward the eastern horizon. "And I see you standing." Her voice does not tremble. "You will endure," she continues, "but not untouched." In the early texts, she does not promise a bloodless triumph. She promises endurance. And endurance is harder, because it demands survival through loss. The mist begins to thin. At the edge of the plain, figures emerge. The Tuatha De Danann gather in formation, shields lifted, armor secured. Among them are gods and champions. Lu of the long arm, Nuada of the silver hand, the Dagda with his great club. They do not ignore her presence. They listen. Even the Dagda, broad and powerful, does not interrupt her speech. When he met her at Samhain in the river, she gave him prophecy tied to this very field. Now that prophecy stands in front of him. She walks along the line of warriors slowly. Some meet her eyes. Some avoid them. One young fighter stiffens when she passes. He recognizes her from a river crossing weeks before. She does not acknowledge him. She does not need to. Her attention lifts toward the western edge of the plain. Dark shapes gather there now. The Fomorian host. Their armor heavier, their forms larger. Their banners black against the brightening sky. The air tightens. War is not noise at first. It is breath held. The Morrigan raises her head slightly. A crow lands on a broken shield near her feet. Then another. Then 3 more, spaced apart across the field. She closes her eyes briefly, not in prayer, in confirmation. When she opens them again, the mist has fully lifted. The 2 armies stand facing one another across open ground. The Morrigan steps back from the center of the plain. She does not stand among the Tuatha now. She moves to the edge, near a low rise where she can see both lines clearly. Because this is not her battle to fight, it is her battle to oversee. And when the first spear flies, she will not flinch. She will measure. The tension breaks suddenly. A horn sounds from the Fomorian side. Shields lift higher. The first charge begins. Grass flattens under pounding feet. The Morrigan does not move, but above her, the crows rise as one. Their wings beat sharply against the morning air, and as steel meets steel for the first time on Mag Tuired, her voice cuts through the clash. Not screaming, not chanting, declaring. This field will remember. The battle surges forward, and she watches. Chapter 7. The Battle Crow, Chooser of the Slain. By midday, the field no longer looks open. Grass has been crushed flat in wide arcs where lines collided. Shields lie overturned, spears broken. The air is thick with iron and churned earth. The fighting has not stopped, but it has fragmented. Clusters of warriors clash in pockets across the plain. Some press forward, others fall back. Some fall entirely. The Morrigan moves through it without being struck. Not invisible, simply unchallenged. A Fomorian giant swings wildly at a Tuatha warrior and misses. The warrior counters. Both collapse seconds later. She steps between them as they lie still. A crow lands on the giant's chest. Another perches near the Tuatha's shoulder. She looks down at both men the same way. There is no favoritism in her gaze. In Irish tradition, she is sometimes called the chooser of the slain. Not because she causes every death, but because she marks those whose time has converged with the moment. A warrior charges past her, blood streaked across his face. He does not see her. Another stumbles backward, dropping his weapon. He does. Their eyes meet, just for a second. He steadies himself, raises his shield again. Survives. She does not intervene. She does not save. She witnesses. Across the field, Lu's spear flashes in bright arcs. Nuada's silver hand catches light between strikes. The Dagda moves like a storm, his club rising and falling with devastating rhythm. But even in the center of force, her presence threads through. A Fomorian captain lifts his sword high and roars. A crow lands on the edge of his blade. He hesitates. That hesitation is enough. He falls moments later under combined attack. Is it superstition? Is it distraction? Or is it alignment shifting beneath him? The Morrigan walks toward a low ridge at the northern edge of the plain. From here, she can see the entire field. Smoke begins to rise in narrow lines, where small fires have caught in trampled brush. The sky has shifted from pale morning to harsh noon. The battle has entered its decisive stage. Bela of the Evil Eye stands at the Fomorian center, massive and imposing. When his terrible eye opens, men drop where they stand. The Tuatha falter. For a moment, the field tilts. The Morrigan's expression does not change, but the crows lift from the ground in a single dark sweep. They circle above Baelor's position, tightening in pattern. Luke steps forward. The confrontation unfolds quickly. A spear flies. Baelor falls. The earth shakes when he hits the ground. A sound ripples outward across the plain. Not triumph yet, but recognition. The balance has shifted. The Fomorian line breaks. Some flee. Some fight until surrounded. The Morrigan descends from the ridge and walks again through the chaos. A fallen Tuatha warrior stares upward, breath shallow. His fingers twitch toward his sword, but cannot close around it. She kneels beside him, not to cradle him, to observe. His eyes flick toward her face. He does not ask for rescue. He does not beg. He understands. She places one hand briefly on his forehead. The crow beside them calls once. His breathing stops. A short distance away, another warrior struggles to stand. Blood darkens his side, but he pushes upwards stubbornly. She glances at him and walks past. He survives. The battle does not end with a single cry. It fades in stages. Shouts become fewer. Metal strikes grow isolated. Eventually, the field settles into a heavy quiet, broken only by groans and distant movement. The Morrigan stands at the center again, Bodies lie in uneven lines across the grass, friend and foe. The crows begin to land in greater numbers now. They hop between shields, perch on broken standards, feed. This is not spectacle. It is completion. In the old understanding of battle, death was not waste. It returned to the land. The Morrigan does not smile. She does not mourn. She lifts her face toward the wind, letting it move through her hair. Victory belongs to the Tuatha. But victory is not joy. It is survival with cost. The plain of Mag Tuired will grow green again. Grass will rise through the churned soil. Farmers will one day walk here and see only open land. But the Morrigan will remember where each body fell. Because she does not forget. She does not fade when the noise stops. She remains. And when the living begin rebuilding, when kings speak of triumph and poets shape songs of glory, she will already be moving elsewhere. Toward another field, another crossing, another man who believes he stands alone. But time changes even gods, and the Morrigan's presence does not stay untouched by centuries. Her name shifts, her shape softens, but she does not disappear. Chapter 8. From Goddess to Banshee. Centuries pass. The plain of Mag Tuired no longer carries the scars of war. Grass grows thick again. Sheep graze where armies once stood. The wind moves across the land the same way it always has. Stories change faster than landscapes. In early Ireland, the Morrigan was named clearly. She spoke to kings, walked battlefields, stood at fords. But as belief shifted, and Christian scribes began recording what had once been spoken by firelight, something subtle happened. She became harder to place. The tall, dark-haired woman who tested rulers did not disappear, but her role narrowed. Her power became less public. The field is no longer filled with armies. Instead, we see a small farmhouse at dusk. Smoke rises from its roof in a thin column. A family gathers inside, unaware of anything unusual. Outside, near the edge of the property, a figure stands beside a low stone wall. She does not approach the door. She does not knock. She waits. In later folklore, people begin to speak of a woman who appears before death. Not washing armor now. Not standing among gods. Crying. A long, rising wail heard in the night. The Banshee. The Banshee. The connection is not written in bold lines. Scholars debate it, but the pattern is familiar. A female presence, attached to families, foretelling death. Appearing at the edge of fields, not interfering, announcing. The Morrigan's older image, sovereign, battle walker, king tester, does not vanish. But for many, she becomes more distant, more spectral. The farmhouse door opens. A young man steps outside, pulling his cloak tighter around his shoulders. He pauses, sensing something. The woman by the wall does not move. She is not transparent, not ghost-like, just still. He squints into the fading light. "Who's there?" he calls. No answer. The wind shifts. A faint sound moves across the field. Not a scream, not dramatic, but unmistakably human. A long, low cry that tightens the air. He freezes. Inside the house, an older woman coughs sharply. Then again. The young man turns toward the door instinctively. When he looks back, the figure near the wall is gone. Only a crow lifts from the stones and flies toward the hedgerow. In some traditions, the Banshee is tied to certain Irish families, appearing only when someone of that bloodline is about to die. That narrowing of scope feels different from the older Morrigan. The Morrigan was not limited to one household. She walked entire battlefields. She tested rulers of whole territories. Yet the core remains. She appears before death. She stands at thresholds. She does not cause. She confirms. The farmhouse grows quiet as night settles fully. The cough inside has stopped. Candles are lit. Neighbours will be told by morning. And somewhere beyond the hedgerow, a tall woman walks along a narrow dirt path under the moon. Her dress moves softly around her legs. Her expression unchanged. Time reshapes stories. It softens edges. It moves gods from hills into whispers. But it cannot erase the foundation entirely. The Morrigan is no longer called to bless kings openly, no longer invoked by warriors before battle in the same way. But in the hush before death, in the uneasy silence before news spreads, in the sudden stillness of a field at dusk, there she remains, not as spectacle, as presence. And even in modern Ireland, where highways cut through old land and electric light replaces hearth fire, some people still speak of her name carefully. Because whether she stands in armour-stained water or at the edge of a quiet farm, she is still watching the same thing. The moment when certainty meets its limit. And that moment has never gone out of fashion. Chapter 9. The Morrigan in Irish Folklore. The road is paved now. Cars move quickly where once only horses crossed. Telephone wires cut clean lines against the sky. Fences divide fields that have been farmed for generations. But some hills remain untouched. Low rises of earth where grass grows uneven and stones push through the surface in quiet defiance of time. On one of those hills stands a single figure, not ancient in posture, not theatrical, just still. Modern Ireland does not worship the Morrigan the way the Tuatha once invoked her before battle. There are no kings kneeling in stone circles, no armies waiting for her voice across open plains. But her name never disappeared. It lives in manuscripts, in retellings, in quiet revival through modern pagan traditions. Some see her as a symbol of feminine autonomy, some as a force of personal transformation, some as a guardian of sovereignty, not of land now, but of self. Interpretations shift with era, yet the oldest elements remain intact. She is tied to thresholds, to decisions that cannot be undone, to the weight of consequence. The hill overlooks a valley where wind turbines turn slowly in the distance. Technology hums where once only crows called. But even now, crows gather. They perch on fence posts. They circle harvested fields. They watch. The Morrigan does not require belief to exist in story. She persists because the themes she embodies never left human life. Power, pride, alignment, outcome. Every leader still faces the test of sovereignty, whether over a nation or over their own household. Every individual still meets moments where choice meets consequence. Every generation still learns that strength without awareness fractures, and that pride without reflection invites correction. She is not moral in the simple sense. She does not reward goodness or punish evil like a ledger. She responds to imbalance. She reveals fault lines. She tests confidence. And sometimes she waits. The figure on the hill lifts her face toward the horizon. No battlefield below. No army gathering. Just land stretching into evening light. The world no longer looks like the one that shaped her earliest myths. But the turning points are still there. In boardrooms instead of battlefields. In arguments instead of duels. In quiet choices made without witnesses. The Morrigan does not need armor or banners. She needs only a moment where someone believes they are untouchable. Because that is when she steps forward. Not always visibly, not always dramatically, but present. The wind presses harder against the hilltop. The grass bends. A crow lifts from the ground and glides across the valley without a sound. The woman watches it go. Then she turns and walks down the slope. Not disappearing, not fading, simply moving on. Because somewhere else, someone is about to cross a threshold. And she has always stood at crossing places. Epilogue. The field grows quiet. The hill is empty now. The wind has settled. The sky has deepened into evening blue. Somewhere in the distance, a single crow calls once, and then falls silent. The land looks ordinary again. That is how it always ends. Not with thunder, not with spectacle. Just quiet ground, holding everything that has passed across it. The Morrigan does not linger for applause. She does not wait for recognition. In the oldest stories, she leaves the field as steadily as she entered it. Not defeated, not triumphant. Simply complete. If you listen closely to these myths, you begin to notice something. She never forces anyone. She offers, She tests. She observes. The hero can refuse her. The king can misunderstand her. The warrior can laugh. But none of them walk away unchanged. And perhaps that is why she endures. Because long after swords are replaced with words and battlefields become highways, the moments she represents are still with us. The choice before consequence, the pride before correction, the silence before a turning point. Tonight, we stepped into her world, across misted fields, through river crossings, onto battle plains and hilltops. And now we step back out. The field grows dark. The wind moves softly through grass that remembers nothing and everything at once. Thank you for listening. Thank you for walking through this story with me. If you found something here that stayed with you, a moment, an image, a question, then the Morrigan has done what she has always done. She has made you pause. And if you'd like to continue exploring the darker edges of myth, the goddesses, the witches, the figures who stand at thresholds, you'll find more waiting here on Lady Mythos. For now, let the night settle. Let the field empty. And rest, knowing that some presences do not fade. They simply wait for the next crossing. Until next time, yours, Lady Mythos.